Oizvoi. So the Rebbe explained that when we talk about, up till here, when we talk about confusing the Satan, it doesn't mean confusing the Satan. He's not going to know which day Rosh Hashanah is, and we're going to trick him, and he's not going to come to criticize. That is not really fitting, because everybody knows when Rosh Hashanah. The Satan is a malach, so he definitely knows. The Rebbe explained what it means to confuse him is that the Satan will think there is no need for him to come to criticize on Rosh Hashanah. Not that he's not going to know when the day is, but he's not going to know that there's a need for him to criticize, as the Rebbe brought in the Gemara, from the Gemara, that because he sees that the Yidden blowing the shofar, he thinks that they already were victorious. So the same thing the Rebbe applies, that when it says that we're ma'ariv the Satan, that we're confusing the Satan, what it really means is that because Yidden are not learning Parshas Breishis and Messiah, the Torah, on Rosh Hashanah. So why aren't they doing that? That seems to be a big deal. Well, they don't need to do it. They're all set. Or why are they not mentioning Rosh Chodesh? Rosh Chodesh would add to the power of Rosh Hashanah, but the Sultan says they're not doing it. So that means that they're all set. So he doesn't have a reason to criticize. So that's why from the tkiyas that they do in Elul, and so they says, well, they've already accomplished the tshuva. They stopped blowing on Erev Rosh Hashanah. They've already accomplished the teshuva. So the Satan is going to think he doesn't have any work to do. He doesn't have to come to criticize anymore. And that means La'ariv Satan, but certainly knows when Rosh Hashanah, but he will think that the Yidden are all set, they have all the Zuchosim, and Memele, he doesn't have to come to criticize. The Rebbe knows what is going to say, the Loshen, so that means that the two things, the thing that we blow on the month of Elul, and we don't on Erev Rosh Hashanah because we already blew on Elul. So those are positive things that the Yetzer Hara may think that we're already all set. We were victorious. He doesn't have to come and bother anymore on Rosh Hashanah. We're confusing him. He doesn't have to come to criticize on Rosh Hashanah Yom Adin because they already were victorious. That we understand with regards to blowing the shofar on Elul and not blowing the shofar on the day before Rosh Hashanah. So it doesn't come, because that emphasizes that they already have the positive, that they had the shofar already blown. They're all set. But these other two, the idea that we don't mention Rosh Chodesh and we don't finish the Torah, those are reasons that we're saying that the Yetzer Hara the Satan thinks that there is no point in criticizing, because look, the Yidden are not even mentioning Rosh Chodesh. They're not even beginning ending the Torah. They're all set. So in the Chazal, they should have said, oh, they're all set. That's why he's not going to come to criticize. It's mashma from the Lashon that the reason why they are not, the Satan is not criticizing, is because they're not reading Rosh Hashanah. Let's look inside both. These two aspects, the aspect of not mentioning Rosh Hashanah in the davening, Rosh Chodesh in the davening of Rosh Hashanah, and not starting the Torah and ending the Torah on Rosh Hashanah, that still requires explanation. It doesn't seem that the previous explanation is satisfying. But der Biur is aber nicht in ganzen glatt. This explanation is not totally smooth. It's not completely smooth with that. Leut dem Biur kommt aus, according to this explanation that we explained, it turns out, as durch nit der Monen Rosh Chodesh, because we don't say Rosh Chodesh in the davening of Musaf, und durch nit maschil sein Bereshis, and through not reading Bereshis. So these are all things that we're missing out, we're not doing. So how is this Satan? Werd nor aufgetan. So this accomplishes Irvuv HaSatan. The Satan gets mixed up because he thinks, oh, they don't need to start reading Shabbos Bereshis. They don't need to read the Bereshis and end it. They don't need to mention Rosh Chodesh. They're all set. But the main reason is because they're all set. That's not mentioned over here. But the Siba, but the truth is, the reason for sein Heder, the reason why he does not, or the Chalishus HaKidruk, or at least the weakening, as the Rebbe said before, because he's not sure, that's the confusion. As we're saying, he's not going to come to criticize. Bashteit Be'iker, it mainly consists in them was main that he thinks as the avodah for Rosh Hashanah is Shem B'Shleimus. He thinks that the reason why they're not mentioning Rosh Chodesh, so they're not doing the beginning and the end of the Torah, is because the avodah Rosh Hashanah is complete and they don't need it. Medaf nit klal nit onkum lahana. We all don't need to come on to these extra zechusim. So in that case, so if that is the meaning, so there should have been emphasized over here, need belois der tzad hashlili, not only the negative, that lo yoda for Rosh Chodesh, he doesn't know about Rosh Chodesh. The reason why he's not coming to criticize because they're all set, because of the advantage. Besides saying the negative that we don't read and we don't do it, is la'arviv HaSatan. We should also la'arviv him because we're all set. We have the avodah from the Rosh Hashanah and we're all doing good. The prat chiyuvi, the positive aspect, the avodah bedugmas avodah Rosh Hashanah in the minyan, this service that is similar to Rosh Hashanah in this matter. So why does it not mention? So therefore, the Rebbe says from Stimas Haloshin, from the language that he says over here, the plain language without specifically explaining it, ein neuhagin, that we don't have the custom lahaskir Rosh Chodesh bepirish b'Rosh Hashanah, that we don't mention beferish on Rosh Hashanah. We're not accustomed to mention Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Hashanah, and the reason is la'arviv hasoten shelo yeda sha'ayom Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, so he doesn't know that today is Rosh Chodesh Tishrei l'yoved lekatrig and should not come to criticize. So we're not saying that Rosh Hashanah we're all set. We're not mentioning anything positive. We're saying that the reason we're mixing up the Satan is that we're not mentioning Rosh Chodesh beferish and Rosh Hashanah. He gets mixed up. Is mashmas euch di siba from the Yovel lekatrig is mitzadem was lo yeda shayom Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, is because he won't know that today is Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. not because he knows that it's all accomplished, they're all set, but he's not coming because he doesn't know was Layoda Shayim Rosh Chodesh Tishri, that today is Rosh Chodesh Tishri. That becomes the reason why he doesn't come. And the Rebbe explains this is different. This problem we only have with the not blowing, not mentioning Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Hashanah, or not making the Siyum and Ascholos HaTorah Rosh Hashanah, in which we're not doing it, and what we want to say is because you're all set. But it's different when we say that we don't blow on Erev Rosh Hashanah because you're all set because of what you blew on the Rosh Chodesh Elul, because that's understood, that we're saying that there is the positive because you blew on Rosh Chodesh Elul, so he's confused. He thinks he doesn't need to come and criticize. But it's different when we're talking about why you're not leaning on the Torah Bereshis and you're not mentioning Rosh Chodesh. Over there, if we're going to explain, the reason is because we don't need to come on to that. So the Rebbe gives a different explanation for not mentioning Rosh Chodesh and for not beginning and ending the Torah Rosh Chodesh for a different reason, a different idea of confusing this Satan. The Rebbe explains that the Satan is confused because the Yidden are taking away something from what they could be doing and should be doing. And the Satan is confused, not because the Yidden are all set, but because he figures, well, they are missing out so much, so there's no point in coming to criticize, because look, they're not reading Rosh Chodesh, and they're not reading Bereshis, and they're not mentioning Rosh Chodesh. Let's look inside. V'yeshloimar Zayin. So the Rebbe says v'yeshloimar. Well, let's just go back for a second. She's nit gleich zum Inyan von ein Teuken be'erev Rosh Hashanah. It's not the same to the idea that we brought down, that you don't blow an erev Rosh Hashanah. Because the Satan will think that the day of judgment has passed. Over there, it's okay, the explanation. But the Loshen Gufein, Teuken be'erev Rosh Hashanah, when you say you don't blow an erev Rosh Hashanah, is madgish asfrir is men yetekeya. So you're basically saying that we are blowing. So it is the zechus of the blowing. We're not blowing now on Erev Rosh Hashanah because we already blew. So the Satan doesn't have what to criticize. Because of the blowing of the month of Elul is over Yom Adin, the day of judgment passed. Zayin. So so we can say as by die zwei inyonim. Nidder monen Rosh Chodesh. By these two ideas, these two aspects, we mentioned 4 or 5 ideas in which we don't mention, which we don't do Arve Vasoten, but these 2 ideas by Rosh Hashanah, Nidder monen Rosh Chodesh bekeshem Rosh Hashanah. Not to mention Rosh Chodesh as it relates to Rosh Hashanah. Umaschilim likrois Bereshis b'simchas Torah, and that we start reading Bereshis and Simchas Torah is der Teuchen von Arve Vasoten. So over there's another content. What is the content? What does it mean to confuse the Satan? Not like by not blowing on the Rosh Chodesh on Erev Rosh Hashanah, we're saying because you're all set, but punkt verkehrt. When the Satan zet, when the Satan sees, as in them talk from the Rosh Hashanah, that on this day of Rosh Hashanah fell by Yidden, the Yidden are lacking their monen. They're missing out, they're not mentioning. And if they're not mentioning B'meila, these Oideris for Rosh Chodesh, and therefore they don't have that arousal, that encouragement that you get from Rosh Chodesh. When Al Derech Zeh, when he sees the Maila for Gemara Shel Torah V'Has Choloso, the advantage that we have from completing the Torah and beginning it, so he sees that they're lacking it. They don't have that. This causes a weakening in his criticism. Mainly because he's thinking, he thinks that Yidden are lacking Avodah. Look, they're missing out on things. Therefore, he doesn't have to put in all the extra effort to try to find more problems, the Yidden, more deficiencies by the Yidden. So this is just the opposite idea than the Rebbe presented before by these two, Arve Vasotin. The other things we say, Arve Vasotin, is he doesn't think he has any need to be Ma'arvev. They're all set already. They finished with the Tkiyas on Elul, and they won the din, so why should he come bother? But here, it's just the opposite. He says they're missing out on this, and they're losing. And because they're losing and they're missing, so I don't have to bother criticizing. They're doomed already because they don't have these extra merits that come with Rosh Chodesh and that come with beginning and completing of the Torah. Now, what do you mean you're tricking the Yetzer Hara? The Yetzer Hara knows that the reason that you're not doing it is because you're trying to trick him. But he's a malach, and he knows that too. But notwithstanding the fact that the Yid isn't doing, they're still missing it. They're not doing Rosh Chodesh, and they're not opening and closing the Torah. So there is less, and because there is less, he has less to criticize. He's not so misametz, not so gung-ho to go ahead and criticize. On Afal P, as their Sotan ways does kufa, even though the Sotan knows this itself. Men tut es der Fahr that we're doing it because because we intend to confuse him. Is doch aber lepoil felt the Yisraelis, but practically that awakening and that merit mit alle Titzos what this brings, including all the results that this brings. We don't have that encouragement, arousal of Rosh Chodesh. We don't have the end and the completion of Torah. So therefore, the Satan is confused. He's not going to be misametz. But now we have to understand. So it turns out that the Yidden are actually losing out to confuse the Yetzer Hara. We're taking away his chus for them. How come we're doing that? That's the Rebbe going to explain now in Oisches. Oisches. But based on this, the question arises. On the other hand. So now we have a question on the other hand. Vikumtes. How come? As mezol taket zunemen dos alles ba'id. Why should we take all this away from the Yid? The Zechusim, the reading of the Torah, the Rosh Chodesh mentioning, as takas is verander by the Kavanah, although we have the intention over here. Larve was sotten to mix up the sotten over Kinal. So found doch by Eden in them talk the Avedus. In the end of the day, Yidden are missing the services of the day. They're missing out the Rosh Hashanah. First of all, the awakening of the Shofar and Rosh Hashanah. This Rosh Chodesh, the awakening of Rosh Chodesh. Und der Inyan von Gemara Shel Torah, and the idea of concluding the Torah, beginning of the Torah. Is there biyur is the explanation. Sometimes when you take something away from you, that even brings in a deeper and a more internal yearning, and it touches you deeper. So the taking away is not losing, but actually brings you about into a higher level, as the Rebbe will bring out the story with the Rebbe Rashab. Das Gufe, was man is sich meineya von die Sachen. The fact alone that we hold ourselves back from these items. Kidei la'arviv hasoten, in order to confuse the soten. Darf, that needs to bring, and that brings to noch a tiferer his eurerus tshuva, to a deeper awakening of teshuva. With this was volt aufgetan geworden den Yonman Al. Then that level of tshuva that would have accomplished if you did that. The level of not doing brings out more deeper by not doing than doing it. This order is tshuva in an oifen, the arousal of tshuva in a way. From koil hayetze mipnimius alev, a voice that comes from the inner of the heart. Verta rizgiruf, and this is brought out al yidei hamerirus shebenafshay, through the bitterness of his soul, al richukei Hashem, on his distance from Hashem, asher rochek mimenu betachlis, that he is so far away, which is the lashon of Likutei Torah that the Rebbe is quoting here, that he becomes very bitter. That's why he touches him to the inner parts of his heart. Od dimeriris al richukei Hashem, and that bitterness, because he is distant from Hashem. The herzich ba'ya'idin in agor starken. This is felt by a yid in a very strong way. Durch sein his boineness, when he reflects in them was man is von him mineya, the fact that they preventing him, the inyonin toivimanal, the good matters of above, kedei la'arviv hasoten, in order to confuse the soten. The herzai matzev, he senses his condition. Ader soten hot klape im azakoyach. He feels that the soten has such a power for him, as men mus to lead them by in tzulemen, so that because of that we have to take away an inyan from tkiyas shofar, the blowing of the shofar, haskoros Rosh Chodesh, mentioning Rosh Chodesh, ukriyas parshas breishis, breish Hashanah, reading the parshas breishis, and Hashanah. So he feels that he has such a power, the Satan, that we need to take it away in order, because we need to confuse him. So therefore, that brings him to that bitterness, which brings him to the inner of the heart. Unoch in aprat is the Soiris Tshuva, and in one detail that is not even from one of this, even greater than the blowing of the shofar, which we do, is the Soiris Tshuva. That awakening of Tshuva, nochat tifere, it's deeper. Vidivos kum dur blows and shofar, that comes through the blowing of the shofar. This Soiris Tshuva from tkiyas shofar, the blowing of the shofar that brings you to tshuva, that comes from something outside you. The shofar is blowing that touches you. If you would read the Parshas Breishis and mention Rosh Chodesh, that would be by something external. These shuvas was come from them nit, but the arousal of tshuva that comes from not being able to do it, was mi is von imeneya an inyan from tkiyas shofar chulu, that you prevent him from tkiyas shofar on the day before Rosh Hashanah, and also preventing him the other matters. That comes from himself, from sein matzav v'chulu, from his condition, etc. Yes, Shloimar, the Rebbe says we can say, as is al derech hasipur, that this is similar to the story from Hasidim, that the Hasidim say wegen kveit kedushas Admor Marashab, the Rebbe Rashab, Nishmos Eden, in the Zman von Tchilas Nisiusei, in the beginning when he first became Rebbe. As we'll see in the story, the Razzo walked in, it was like a little bit unsettled yet at the time. A Yid is a rein of Yechidus zum Rebbe Nishmos Eden. A Yid went into a meeting, a private meeting with the Rebbe Nishmos Eden, with the Rebbe Rashab. Und hat gebeten a broche in an ernsten Indian. He asked for a blessing in very serious matters. Bei welchen hat sich genötigt, for which he needed. In grosses eures rachamim, he needed great arousal of compassion. Aber der Rebbe Nishmos Eden hat ihm geantwortet, but the Rebbe Nishmos Eden answered him, as kann ihm nicht helfen in them, he's not able to help him about this. Noch ein Herrn, as I answer, after hearing such an answer, response, is the Rita Ruiz von Rebbe's Cheder. So the Yid left the Rebbe's room, und hat sich voneinander gewöhnt mit bittere Tränen, and he was started to sob with bitter tears. Gehendik afarventer, while he was crying and he was walking, but by begegnen dem Razo, he came across, he met up with the Rebbe Zalman Aaron, the brother from Rebbe Nishmos Eden, the brother of the Rebbe Nishmos Eden. Und auf sein Scheile, so the Rebbe Nishmos Eden, the Rebbe Razo asked him, was weint so stark, why is he crying so strongly? Hat der Yid ihm erzählt, so the Yid related to him, was ist geschehen, what happened? Und was der Rebbe hat ihm geantwortet, and what the Rebbe answered him. Der Razo ist rein zu sein Bruder dem Rebbe, so the Razo went into his brother the Rebbe. Wie der Mont, as mentioned, is as given with Chilas Yimei Nisiusei. This was in the beginning of his leadership, so he can just go in. Und hat ihm gesagt, and he said to him, how are you talking? How is this? How do you do this? As when when somebody enters to ask your blessing, sagst du kannst ihm nicht helfen, you tell him that you can't help him. Bis as hamevakish weint mit moisholish, to the extent that the one who is requesting is crying with bitter tears from Gross Tzari, has such pain. Or the Rebbe Nishmos Eden on them gartel. So the Rebbe Rashab, he put on his gartel again, and he passed along as the Yid soll zu ihm reinkommen noch einmal, that the Yid should come in once again. When is a rein, when he came in, the Rebbe Nishmos Eden gebenched, the Rebbe benched him, and the bracha is bekunim geworden bepoil, and that blessing came to fruition. Actually, that blessing came to be. The chayre, so seemingly, darf man verstehen, need to understand. Bald as the Rebbe Nishmos Eden not him, he can't help. Since the Rebbe Nishmos Eden was able to help him, kinire for them simam, or as we see from the end of the story, that he was helped. How come he didn't do it in the beginning? Und noch abgesagt in Azaifim, but he refused it in such a way as hat him gebracht that he brought him to tears. Nor the Asbora was the explanation possibly is like we said before. Der Eid was hat gebeten im Rebbe's bracha. The Eid that requested the Rebbe's blessing is demoled at that time to leave sein matzav haruchni, because his spiritual standing given nit muksher. He wasn't fit. He wasn't fit. Hat nit gekent bakumen azag groise bracha. He could not have received such a great blessing with their matzav hat gefordert as the condition needed to be. He couldn't get such a bracha. Er is not given a leader, so he wasn't a vessel, he wasn't a vehicle to receive that. Und der Fall kann man ihm nicht helfen, that's why he can't help him. Aber der Entfer von der Rebbe, but the Rebbe's response hat bei ihnen gepeulte Art zu Brochenkeit. It caused him a brokenness. Und hat ausgegossen sein Herz von Eberstunden, and he poured out his heart to Hashem. Das hat aufgetan. That accomplished, as it is geworden, der Anaye Metzias. He became a new entity. He became a keli, a vessel to Berchosish ala Kodesh Baruch Hu, a vessel to Hashem's blessing durch dem Rebbe Nishmos Eden, through the Rebbe Nishmos Eden. By telling him that he can't help him, that itself brought about that help. And Tess, the Rebbe said there's even a deeper idea in this, a tifre in them. It's even more and deeper. Not only is this a matter that brings out a deeper arousal of tshuva, but really, you're not really missing anything. Felt euch nicht dabei der Ilu von the Bepoil. We're also not lacking that in actuality, you're not laning the beginning and end of the Torah, and you're not mentioning Rosh Chodesh, and you're not blowing the shofar on Erev Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. Those was is sich meneya von the inyonim. The reason we hold back from these matters is minhag Yisrael. That becomes the tradition by Yidden was Torah, which is Torah. As vert an inyan shel kiyum poel haTorah, this becomes a matter of fulfilling the Torah. Was tut mitich simcha rabba, you do it from great joy. And das is the cheshbon von dem Soten. That is the Soten's calculation is asoif felt ba'avedus b'nei Yisrael bepoil. That in the end they're lacking it. So he says they're missing out. Ubefrat as yesh loimar. Especially we can say that he doesn't even know from the deep as from kolo pnimo vesemi, the inner voice from the yid, that lack that brings out even a deeper connection. The Sultan doesn't know about that. Even as it is in the thought that the yid is the choich do dargis b'machshava. There's also different levels in machshava. Aber, but the Rebbe says the truth of the matter, mitzad rotzen hamelech, the will of the king, what Hashem wants, is talking chiluk tzushin ein avodah mitat tzveita. There is no difference between one avodah and the tzveita, whether we're mekayim a minik torei, or we're mentioning Rosh Chodesh, or we're blowing on Rosh Chodesh. When the Yid is mekayim mitzvahs, when the Yid observes the mitzvahs, they're far. You sanctified us with your mitzvahs and you commanded. It makes no difference to him. As cooked ois, even when it appears, as you're losing something good. Since he knows, however, as goes gufa is Torah, that itself is Torah. He does it with great joy and a gladness of heart. Those gufa bring that alone brings the writing and the sealing for the good. The shana tova mesuka for a good as we hear lematan asarat tvachim, lota and tvachim legashim yisubaruch nizgam yochad, physically and spiritually together. This is Mesichas Yom Simchas Torah Umotzoi Shabbos Parshas Bereshis Tovshin Lamed Tes.